Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. This week I'm talking with Tom Watson, who's one of the co-founders of the new social media platform for photographers called Glass, about why we should be worrying less about engagement and how we can be building more connections. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Hey, my photo friends. Welcome back to this episode of the podcast. As always, I am very glad to have you here today. Glad to be hanging out with you and just talking about cool things like photography in the future and what apps look like now for photographers. I really think that you're going to enjoy this episode. You know, recently, the head of Instagram came out and said that Instagram is no longer a photo sharing platform and that instead they're going to be focused on promoting entertainment. And for them, the most engaging content is video. So therefore, photos are going to have to take a back seat. Now, what stinks is that Instagram started as a photo first platform, and a lot of photographers jumped on to Instagram and now are feeling like we're being left high and dry without very many other options. There are things like Facebook groups and there are things like, Flickr still around technically, sure, but there's no real good alternative to what Instagram was in the beginning, like when it first started, specifically for photographers. And then comes along Tom Watson. And today, there's an app currently on the App Store. I've been using it for about a month now. It is called Glass. And what it promises to do is to kind of be that place for photographers. It is definitely a photo-forward platform, photo-first platform. And I have found it to be really fun and engaging. So today we talk about Tom, but I want you to know that this isn't like one giant commercial for Glass, right? I invited Tom on because I really wanted to know, like, what are going to be the things that you're working on that is going to benefit photographers? Like, what is going to make this app great for photographers? And what I really think that you're going to enjoy quite a few of the answers that Tom has is that he's taking, as a designer and not somebody like a venture capitalist, he has a very different approach to how design and applications should work and fit within your life that maybe a venture capitalist has very different ideas for. So you're going to hear those in this interview, and again, I really think that you're going to like them. If you want to give Glass a shot, you can download it right now. Currently, as of 2021 here, Glass is iPhone, iOS only, but should be coming to other platforms within the next year or so. It used to be invitation only, but Tom let me know that now it is open to anybody. So again, if you want to hop on it, I encourage you to check it out. I really think that you're going to enjoy it. Come on in. Hang out with some other photographers, see some new and inspiring work, and yeah, for me, I think that's one of the reasons why I got really excited about Glass. Well, okay, I take that back. I actually wasn't excited about Glass when I first heard about it. I thought, okay, another social platform for photographers, whatever. We heard it. There was something like a year ago that everybody hopped on, and nobody's on it anymore. But the thing that was different about Glass is that I downloaded it and I gave it a try, and you can tell, at least I could tell from literally the first interaction, that there's one job of this application, and that is to view photos and consume them and look at them and think about them. And there's not a lot going on. It wants you to take that time, take a deep breath, look at the photo, think about it, leave a comment, interact with the photographer themselves. And that to me was really compelling. So I started sharing some photos and chatting with other glassers, I guess. I don't know if there's a name for them yet, but you heard last week I talked with Christopher Davis. He was somebody who I found on Glass pretty early on and was really excited to talk to him as well. So again, I really think that, if you want to listen to this interview and then check it out, I think that you would like it. You can feel free to add me if you are already on Glass at Raymond, but I don't think that the username thing kind of works in the same way. So I think you would just have to search for Raymond Hatfields, and then obviously you would find me. So there you go. With that, That's too much. We're going to talk about this in the interview. So let's just go ahead and get on into this interview right now with Tom Watson. Before we talk about where you are today and what it is that you've created, can you tell me how you got started in photography in the first place?
Oh, sure. I wasn't expecting it, but great. I kind of fell in love with photography when I was given an instant camera back in uh, like I was 11 or 12, and we were on vacation in Hawaii of all places. And I just started taking photos with it and found that little instant camera so amazing. And then the results I got from it, I was really passionate about. Later, I joined the photography class in high school, and I just really loved the black and white photography there. I started getting in the darkroom and really just became interested in it, and always just loved it. Um, Later on, I did a Polaroid breakfast. I fell in love with instant photography and Polaroid cameras, specifically the SX70, which is a beautiful one that I know people
Yes.
really like. It's a beautiful object. And I kind of got into this. This was in 2008, 2009. I started hosting those at South by Southwest. It was this little Polaroid breakfast thing I did. And so those little instances of it really just fell in love with photography in multiple moments. But that was sort of when I liked it. It was probably back when I got an instant camera, right, way back when.
hmm
Um,
So
yeah.
one thing that I'm always interested in is that, especially from somebody who photography is not your profession, but it is definitely a passion of yours. Hearing your story, started off with a disposable camera. It's very instant,
Yep.
no
Yep.
controls, and then later even falling in love with the Polaroid. Same, very minimal controls, if any, I think. So for you, can you tell me kind of what the role of photography plays in your life?
I mean, at one time, I just loved the idea of like documenting memories and sort of just capturing those moments in my life, and that continued um, a lot with. I have two young boys. They're getting older now. It's really happening, and the difference between them, and just making sure I'm documenting it. And I love that you can tell a whole story in a photograph. So like you get that moment where you get to tell a lot more than just the quick snapshot. There's something like my like a frame in a story can be a lot more than just a quick image. And if I can document those and create almost art, I'm a designer by trade, so it's a visual medium, and it really resonates with me. And so being able to do both those things, just yeah, it continues to be a passion. It's always been a strong hobby. My work can get in the way of that. I've worked a lot over the years, and so my interest and use of photography has varied. And when you have young children, your life is kind of turned upside down. But I just to always come back to a camera, or now phones. It's been a lifelong passion. I mean, yeah, it's crazy
Yeah.
how many years it's been now. Yeah.
I always find it funny whenever like I'll interview somebody and I'll ask similar questions about the beginner, like where they started in photography, and it's always fun to watch their reaction when they think like, oh my gosh, like how long has it been? But I think it just gets to a point to where, and I'm sure that you can attest to it as well, having children. Once you have children, you almost can't imagine your life before children. You forget what life was like before then. And I think with photography, it feels very similar, especially after you've been doing it for a few years. You almost don't remember like what it was that you did from either an artistic perspective or just some sort of release, like that creative release before photography. And I find it interesting that it kind
I
of that it
agree.
kind of feels that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went from the disposable camera, Hawaii, and then later in high school taking a photography class. I'm sure that you learned, the manual mode, the exposure triangle, all of these things. What
Yep.
was the toughest part technically for you, going from more of an instant, just a capture type device, to being more in control of your images?
Um, I mean, I think there's just sort of a bit of a learning curve, right, to playing with the camera, getting used to all of the controls itself. But I think for me, I'm trying to go back to that moment, right, when I was like holding a camera. Um, Depth of field definitely took a little getting used to, right? Making sure I'm setting my f-stop to making sure the eyes are sharp when I want to take a portrait, or if I'm trying to like get that focus just right in the darkroom. It was fun. I was using black and white film, and was getting into the darkroom and doing that. So like getting all the technical aspects of it dialed in was really fun. I shifted to digital when I was living in Japan. I bought my first Nikon, like real, like actual camera there, and that was a whole like a nice learning curve, and like not just using like the auto modes, but really getting into the f-stops and figuring those things out and seeing how I could create those images. I was into Flickr at the time, and just learning from other photographers there kind of kept me doing it. I guess I'm meandering off your initial question, but what I'm getting at is like it just sort of built over time. Like there was like, oh, this is interesting. How does someone get to this? Oh, this is really compelling. How does someone get to that? And I kept learning and taking courses and stuff. Yeah.
So obviously, you had school and whatnot, but you think for you, where the term where the rubber met the road was going to be just through self-discovery and practicing on your own?
I think absolutely. I mean, I took one class in high school. It's like a, it's a high school course, right? Like I barely remember all the details of it now, but it just sort of planted those seeds of like, wow, I love this. This is just such a fun place to be doing something. Yeah.
I love that. So today, you're in a very different place than you were, I'm sure, in high school. So let's go ahead and talk about kind of the main reason why you're here today, which is glass. So on June 30th, as many people know, Adam Mosseri, I hope I said that right, who's the Mosseri, okay, the head of Instagram, announced that Instagram, which started off as a photo sharing platform, is no longer photo forward, right? They're no longer a photo sharing app, and that they're going to be focused on video and entertainment. What was your reaction to hearing that?
I mean, I wasn't overly surprised. I mean, my background, I worked at Facebook from 2009 to 2013. I worked with Adam quite a bit. And I was there when Facebook purchased Instagram. And I realized and recognized that like the way that model works and the way in which they need to expand ever and ever greater markets, you can't. It would be incredibly challenging not to continue to serve the initial needs of that audience of photographers, which is what Instagram initially started out as. And so, as far back as 2013, I started thinking about a community like Glass. It has been many names, and I've had many different projects, but I've wanted to get to this like opportunity that I saw, which was that we could create a community specifically for photographers, and that would require a very different business model and a very different way of approaching this problem than what Instagram and other large social networks need to do in order to meet those needs of their ever-growing audience.
Yeah. What do you mean by when you had just said there, like obviously, you know what? I totally lost my train of thought. I'm going to move on to my next question, I guess, which is when it comes to photography communities, you had mentioned Flickr earlier. Instagram started off as technically a photography community. So today, now that you have Glass, can you tell me, I guess, what is the role that you hope that Glass fills, I guess, in a photographer's life?
Right now, we're hoping that we have big ambitions. I don't want to but right now today, in our very initial bit, is we want to be an incredible community for photographers. I mean, that's like our goal. It's a community for other photographers to meet and to learn and to grow as photographers. It's professionals to share their work and to be that audience, but then it's also to meet other new photographers and amateurs to meet professionals to meet amateurs to learn and grow. It's all of that bit that you want to put into a photography community. And it's not a space that we're going for influencing and to grow your audience and to shout out all this stuff right now, and maybe someday, but right now it's focused on that specific niche.
So how is this different than okay, so there's where I was going, is that with the focus of community in a photo sharing app here, I think is obviously one that a lot of people desire, they're looking for. They love that sense of connection with others. But I guess how is Glass different than other social media, even things like Flickr, like you had mentioned earlier?
Sure. So a couple of big points that like I would want to make, and we have raised no venture capital, and I think that's lost on a lot of people and why that's important. But for many people, like you see these internet services, they pop up and you can just like go sign up and do them, and you're like, oh great, and I'm giving this information and I'm uploading these photos and I'm doing this stuff, and there's a lot of reasons why people want you to do that, because they can track your data, they can sell advertising to you, they can do these things, and they can grow to be very large, and the goal is, and they're free because they can be supported by advertising. Our model, we've taken no venture capital, and so we don't need to be massive. We would love to be very big. That's great. We have aspirations to it, but we don't need to pivot to find that, what they call like a rocket ship for venture capital, like which you have to be exponentially large. And so Glass is very different in that aspect. And so we can continue no matter what to focus on the photographer and photography community. We don't need to pivot to find something larger. And that comes to our second point, which is the business model, which is that we need to charge a subscription service instead of advertising in order to do that. So those two pieces work in tandem. We've also taken on no venture capital. We have no investors. We don't need to like it's part of that. We don't have to grow to be massive. So those two things are very important to mention, because a community like Flickr, they were started, I want to say like 2003, 2004. And they had taken on venture capital. They ended up selling themselves to Yahoo, and then they were then sold to SmugMug, I believe it was now recently. So they've changed hands a couple of times, and so that causes a lot of churn. And then for Instagram, like they need to continue to compete with other social platforms, and so that causes them to pivot and move away. Whereas like a community like we're hoping to build with Glass, it can focus continuously on the needs of photographers. We also offer some features that are very important to us, but those are like some of the ones that I wanted to highlight. The other ones would be, we've taken a big effort from day one to make sure we've got blocking, reporting, a clear community guidelines that are there for our community. And these things they sound just like checkmark features, but we intentionally built those ahead of building features that we knew we wanted to do in order to make this a safe and inclusive community space for our community. And a lot of companies wouldn't do that, and they wouldn't have the choice to, because they would need to ship, build, go, and do these things in order to prove exponential growth, which is sort of the entire venture capital game. So those pieces are some of the ones we do. We also offer like a lot better image compression and quality. We offer like P3 color support for your images, and those things I think are really like unique to Glass, and help us like highlight a higher quality image than what Instagram is offering, for example.
Of course, yeah. That was one of the standout features that I had noticed right away when using Glass, is just that how much more detail you get out of the images than you would based off of, I don't know, whatever the compression algorithm I'm assuming that Instagram has. And the photos look absolutely beautiful. And I think right away, like right from that moment, I realized that like everything that I was using within Glass was going to be geared specifically towards photographers. And even if that meant that it's not going to work for a lot of people, it meant that there are things specifically made for photographers to give them a better experience. Another thing being, that there's no ability to take a photo within the app, which I think is cool. There's no like filters, there's no editing of photographs. And now correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm assuming that this is because in a photo focused community, you're assuming that the photographer has already completed their photo and now they're just ready to share it. Okay, good. Thumbs up there.
Correct. We believe that. Yeah.
What are some of the other either design or functionality choices that were made specifically to benefit photographers?
A big one is that we also show the EXIF data, the EXIF data from a photo. So it shows you the f-stop, the focal length, the camera, if you've taken a digital camera. And
Yes.
we look to open that up to even more camera types and even film types in the future. But right now that's a more complicated thing. Right now, what we do is if you've taken a digital photo, and for beginning photographers, I don't know if you know this, but like your digital camera embeds all the like shot information about it, and it puts it in this what they call EXIF data. And then what we do is we just surface and show that right below the photo. And that was wanting to be a very big and clear signal from the beginning. This place is geared towards photographers and people who care about that. As a designer who used to design a lot of web sites and like things, and used to build websites, I have a technical background. I often think of this as sort of the view source of like a website or a web page, where you could see the like technical underpinnings of it. The version of this is sort of like you get to see a little bit more of the view source of how a photograph was made. And I think that's something that we sort of strive for at Glass. We're like, okay, we want to like give you a little more of that detail, that surface. We have bigger plans for all of that, but that's a photography specific one. The one that's coming, we've announced that we're working on, and currently we're working on building, is photography specific categories. So when you upload a photo, you're going to be able to categorize your photos in specific photography categories. So black and white, aerial, portrait, wedding, those sorts of categories, you're going to see them. And it's a set list to start with, but that's a very clear signal to photographers that like, oh, this is a space that you can tag your photos with those, and not just like any hashtag to like be big and specific. It's like a specific subset of those. And then you'll be able to discover photographs and photographers through those channels. You'll be able to also go see those searching by those category types.
I love that idea. In fact, that's one of the things that every time I use Glass, I keep thinking to myself, because it seems like there's quite a range of photographers, whether it be, street black and white, landscape, portraits, that I keep thinking, I want to see more of this type of imagery. And I love that idea. So just to confirm there, those initial categories, they're going to be created by Glass, right? It's not user uploaded, as far as there's not going to be a million different aerial, drone, sky type. Okay.
No, it's just a set. It's I think I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's around 20 to 30 categories we're going to start with. Beautiful. And so you're going to be able to like pick, and you'll be able to choose. We're deciding on the number, but you won't be able to like have every category for every photograph. You're going to
sure.
pick. You're going to pick a couple. I forget. We have to choose the exact number, but we're kind of picking around 3 to start right now, and we'll like decide that you can pick those. So it could be a black and white aerial. Wedding photo maybe, so it's like somebody but that would so that covers you enough. You have to kind of pick the main ones for that photograph, so then it would show up in those channels when you would go look at those categories.
That's so cool.
So you could discover, and that's the thing we're pretty excited about getting out the door. We know that our community, it grew a lot faster than we were anticipating. So that was another thing, which was clearly we struck a chord and found a need, which was something we were hoping for, we all felt passionate about, but it's been great. But our community has definitely came back and said, like, you need to do discovery better. We knew that was something we needed to do. We just weren't anticipating at launch that it was going to be so.
Of course, that makes sense.
So we're accelerating it. We're hoping to get it out as soon as we can. It's just that the more people that get on the platform too, it can make it more challenging to find those people that you want to find. So we're working hard to.
Yeah. Well, by having a small, focused, dedicated team, without taking any sort of venture capital, I think I was just thinking, I had a story in my head right there, but I lost it. But I just love the idea of, let's take the most important things here, because I'm sure if you had a team of 1 million people, you'd work on every single one of those requests, whether it be good for the platform or not. But having this small team really forces you to look at, well, is this going to benefit photographers, or is this just because one person wants it and we're going to be wasting our time here? This is great.
We do have a feedback board, feedback.glass.photo, and that really helps us also take in stuff from the community. It's a big differentiating factor for us that we can listen directly to our customers. Mm-hmm. So our customers are the people who are subscribing to Glass, and they're asking for these things we want, and we can see them rank, people upvote the things that they care about, and they can tell us the things that they're needing. And there's no trade-off between, well, yes, it's a chronological feed, right? We offer this feed where it's like you follow these people and we show you those photos that they post in the chronological order in which they're reverse chronological technically, but like the order in which they posted them. And it's not a like, oh, we need to change it to be an algorithmically generated feed where we're guessing which photographs you're going to like, so you stay engaged longer and you need to like stay in our app because we need to keep you engaged so that we can show you more advertising so we can make more money. Instead, we can just focus on the fact that you need better EXIF data and we want to give that to you. Like we can just listen to what you're asking for and try to meet those needs. And that's a big differentiator and a big reason why, after spending a lot of time working on with large scale big tech, I wanted to do something different. And so took us about 18 to 20 months to get to this point now where we're able to like let people use it and to do it. And it requires a lot of like side time, and not everybody's full time all the time on the project. And we moved to the company, and that meant we had to go a little slower, and we don't move quite as fast. We don't have as many people, but we get to focus on those, and it makes those hard choices for us. And it really is. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this, very excited about that this is working for all of us here at Glass. So, yeah.
Well, before I move on to my next question, I had one quick question about EXIF data. Is that something that we'll be able to search for in the future? Like you could on Flickr, say like Camera Finder or Lens Finder or something like that?
I don't want to say for sure, but we definitely want to do that. Like, I want to be clear that is like an often requested feature. It was a favorite feature of mine when I used to use Flickr often and regularly. And I think it's a really fun way to discover specifically like, oh, this was taken with, let's say a Fuji X100 or something, and you click on it and then you get to go see all the shots taken by that camera, and you can really like see how that camera works, or you can buy lens for that camera, and those sorts of like ways in which you can look at and discover photography through a gear way, which we don't want to be overly gear heavy, but we like want you to be able to at least explore that through our platform. So I would say we would love to do it. It just give us some time. We're working on things.
Of course. I think my favorite part of that is that, especially for new photographers, oftentimes I see in the beginner photography podcast community is people will say something like, I don't know, I only have a Canon T7 or something, but I want to upgrade to like this camera because my T7, is an entry camera or something like that. And I love to just go on Flickr, find photos from a T7 that look fantastic, and then post it and be like, what's missing? Like we got to really ask ourselves, what is it that you are missing from this camera that this other camera is going to help you with? Because I mean, as as many photographers know, it's not the gear. You can really take a great photo, even with just like the cell phone in your pocket. So a Canon T7 or whatever is gonna do a great job. So I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the subscription model, because this is something that I hear quite often. Everybody says this is what the world is going to. Everybody says that this is not something that they want. This is something that a lot of people have been holding back on, say, signing up for Adobe Creative Cloud to be able to use Lightroom because, what's another subscription? So I know just in doing some research here that there truly is a reason behind the subscription. And I would love for you to share that, because I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I've already touched on a lot of the points. It's that in order to go direct to the customer and to listen to what their needs are and wants are, and to avoid the advertising model, which is what all of social media is really supported by these days, we need a subscription model. We need a way in order to keep this going. We need to pay ourselves the time and effort to build this thing for you. Otherwise, we're unable to keep it going. So it's like the basics of it. It's not particularly complicated. We try to be really upfront and generous with it. We're offering you a free 14-day full trial. We try to you can do anything in the app for 14 days. You can make your own decision. You cancel it at any time. We have it's $5 a month to start with, or during launch pricing right now, we have it's $30 for the entire year, which is $2.50 a month. We feel is quite reasonable for people who are spending serious gear on serious cameras and phones and whatnot to do this.
I agree.
So we're not trying to be overly crazy about it. we think, and it's a very sustainable model for us. So we think we make a profit by doing this in order to pay ourselves and to, like, we're not, and I think that's important. Like, I think it's important to make a healthy business decision off of it. I was shocked to find certain services have never turned a profit. People often turn to Flickr as an example of a service that they wish they use, and they're 17 years into their product. They're not a profitable business endeavor, and that is a crazy statistic for me. Like, that's a pretty insane number, to realize. Like that's a and we wanted to find alternative ways in doing this and to build a sustainable community. I think it's not just a community, but one that's sustainable and one that we can continue to operate on. And to be independent, we're able to do that through subscriptions and not over them. So those are big reasons why we're moving to a subscription model. I think, I also feel like a service like ours is well suited for it. Sometimes, tools and buying an object or what feels like a digital tool can feel a little strange to be having to constantly pay for a subscription. But that said, software engineers, like, software requires maintenance and support and updates and they're not just like, we made this object, here is your knife, we give it to you and you get to own it. We have to keep it going, and there's server costs involved for us, and storage and hosting costs for all of the photographs that are uploaded. One thing I want to mention this in the subscription model, like, oftentimes people try to lock you in or try to like, oh, you've uploaded photos and now you can't get them out, or and none of those things are true with Glass. We built the ability for you to download your photos easily. Like, it takes a second for us to go get them from the server and download them, but we'll give them to you as soon as we can. It's just like, they're stored there. And we have a delete option, which we're actually working on making sure you don't accidentally delete it, because we've had a few people be too aggressive with that, but we really want you to be able to delete anything if you're not happy with our service. Only a couple people, we figured it out. It's okay.
Yes.
But we really want to offer that ability for you to get your stuff complete. If we're not meeting your needs, that's okay. We understand. Then that's something we'll offer you a way out. And that's not always true of other services, and we want to try to do better there.
Right. So I think people understand, obviously why a subscription model is probably good for the business side of it. But I think one thing that often gets lost is, like, for photographers, well, how does that benefit me? So can you tell me how being a subscription service benefits the user experience of just using Glass?
Yeah, I mean, we can focus on every bit of the interface being the photograph. Like, if you scroll that feed, it's a beautiful photograph, and then you can go into the detail view and it's just the experience of that photograph being shown, your name. Every piece of that interface is a choice, and when I design Glass, so like each picture and each pixel is what I meant to say, is able to be just for the photographer and for the beauty of the photo and the choice there and the service of them. And that's really important. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but like no need to pivot away from the needs of photographers. The subscription makes us get to focus on photographers consistently and their needs and their wants and what we want to build and all the future that it entails, and not focus on other venues and going after other engaging things. We can be like, no, this is what you want. You've told us what you want, and we can build it. We don't track people, so that like allows us to just listen to the feedback we get. Yeah. There's a saying in building product that you are what you track, and oftentimes, like, your audience may not be aware of like this, but in my field, there's something called MAUs, or monthly active users, and then there's WOWs, or weekly active users, and these are ways in which services keep track of how often you're coming back to the service and how much you're engaged in that product offering. And so you're there to like continue to come back to the service. And there are huge teams of people at these companies geared towards increasing that number, because that's tied to bonuses or, stock, like all this like incentive structure, like, and because it's what the business does. The more you're there, the more time spent on the app, the more time an advertisement can be shown to you that can then lead to that. That's the model. I don't like Glass doesn't have that issue. We don't have to have that. And that's what the subscription model benefits you. And it might be a little hidden, but not only is it just the pixels and the interface and the way in which everything can be built, but it is the full product offering is different. And it's why we're passionate about keeping it that way. And we're happy to see people resonate with it and subscribe and be part of this, but we hope that it continues to resonate with people, and we can continue to build this way and in this manner. We just the team we really love building this way, and so it's really exciting for us to sort of do it. Yeah. Because it's a trade-off the other way, and I've spent years doing it, as you can imagine. So hopefully that gets to the point of really the benefits of the photographer. I don't mean to be about me and what we're building for you, but we really think it's going to benefit the end photographer in such a huge way, and the person who's in the service.
You know, one thing that I love, which is really interesting, is that I think, as you said, we're so used to using social platforms that have advertisements that it just becomes white noise. It just we just see it and we just kind of scroll past it. We say whatever. And I think probably one of the first times I opened up Glass, what struck me is just how simple it was. You know, it was like, this is it. You're here to look at photos. You're not here to be sold Tide Pods. You're not here to be, sold MeUndies or whatever it is. Like, we want you to look at photos and we want you to have a great time. And I think it was in that moment that I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead and subscribe to this because this is fun. This is great. And having those conversations, things like not having likes, not having, a follower count or whatever, really does focus on the photography, really helps me kind of tune all of that information out, because I can tell you on more than one occasion, I've looked at a photo and thought, how in the world does this person have 1 million followers, And then that kind of changes the dynamic of how you look at an image rather than just looking at the image for itself. And
those are very true. Yeah, the like and follower counts. I don't mean to interrupt you, but those are like, we intentionally removed counts entirely from the interface, and that is not an engaging choice. That is a choice that like people want to grow those numbers. They're impactful in ways that I don't know if is the most healthy for all of us to choose. And it's something that I'm glad that we can experience like a space in which you don't have to do that, and you can really just come and look at the photos and comment on them. I love using Glass. It's for those reasons, especially I don't have the interesting conflicting feelings that I have, using other social media. And I think that's an exciting space to explore. And I hope more types of services come from that are like this. This is specific for photographers, and we want to continue to focus on niche. But I hope that there are more opportunities for other types of spaces. We've had some users even ask, are you considering doing, painting? I'm not a photographer. Or are you considering other venues? People will post on Twitter saying they would like to have. Now, where's our Twitter version of Glass, right? Because now there's a photography one, and so I think there's just an opportunity for other platforms to crop up in this space, in this direction, and I hope that people consider their mental space and their mental time in a different way. So it's a bigger, broader conversation, and not specifically on photography, but it's something that I'm equally passionate about. It's just been my profession for a long time.
Yeah, no, I can see it. Just talking to you, I can tell how excited you are and how passionate you are. I'd love to know, with Glass still being in its infancy, I guess you could say, what's the long-term vision for Glass? What do you think it'll look like, say, this time next year?
Well, I would hope to be bigger, more sustainable, a lot more features. So we have a lot more features planned in the pipeline, and hopefully on at least one more platform. I'd love to be, not just iPhone only. And to expand a bit. We have plans there. We're small still, so it requires us growing a little bit as a team. We don't actually want to be super big team. We like the small and nimble, but we're going to grow as the customers grow and the user base grows. But yeah, those are sort of our year vision. It's hard to it's hard in tech. Things change fast and things move quickly. But I think that's we hope to do those simpler things.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it. Can you talk a little bit about algorithms, right? Because algorithms is one thing. I don't think I've ever heard somebody say online, like, man, this algorithm is awesome, right? It's always like something negative about social media algorithms. And at Glass, as you said, you take a non-algorithmic approach. So what does that mean again for kind of that user experience? How does that change compared to something like an Instagram?
Well, so no algorithms, like everything is, it's a bit of a misnomer, right? Like, like you just order something in a list, that's like technically an algorithm, but like it works for a broader sense. I think what people react to is people tracking them as an algorithmic way to then
Sure.
display content to them. And I think that's the, like, and we use no algorithms as sort of a shortcut, but that's the hang up, or the part that we don't want to be part of, which is we don't want to track your interactions with our application to then display different content to you. We want you to have the choice to pick what you see on our platform, interact with it in the way you see fit, and then move along with your day, do whatever you want. And I think that's a big differentiator. The only algorithm that we have currently is that we show you the list of photos that the people you followed reverse chronologically,
Yeah.
and that's it. That's like the end of it. I guess technically another one is that the page of community members is random. So like
Oh,
right
is
now,
it? Okay.
we tried a little basic ranking one, and we were like, that's not really what we want to be doing, and like, so it's just random right now, and we're
Oh,
hoping to
wow.
offer categories which will show you a different view into that. So we're really trying. I mean, it's a very big differentiator for us, in how we do it. So there, technically are some, because there's no way to avoid them, but we don't track and we don't manipulate the content in order to show you something based on your actions, which I think is a
Mhm.
really, really, really great thing for us.
Yeah, I guess I had just assumed, not knowing that that being able to discover the other users was maybe like the most recently signed up or something, because scrolling, sometimes it would refresh itself and I'd see brand new faces. But I like that it's random, because you kind of get that idea, and maybe this is that social media mindset of like, oh, well, if I just signed up, that's going to give me the best bet of like getting more followers. And then you realize that's not what this app is all about. So I love that it's.
People really have a hard time unwind. We've noticed this a lot. People have so much preconception now for a decade of being kind of hardwired into engagement. How do I get this interaction, and what do I post in order to get?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a calmer space. So yeah, we really we like that about it. I think it's really something special about that. And a few people that have been around a long time around the internet a long time, I guess, it was just like, wow, this feels kind of retro in some way. And I don't think that is a bad thing. I think there's some interesting calmness to the space that I'm proud of, that we've been able to bring to people again.
Yeah, it definitely is a bit of a rewire that you have to do there, but so far I think it's been worth it. What for you
Well, that's
has
good.
been your favorite part about being on Glass? Because I know just the other day I saw that you and Phil Schiller were having a conversation on one of his photos, and I thought, this is amazing that this is happening right now. So for you, like, what has been some really cool moments? What have been some cool photos that you've seen?
That was a very cool moment, but and I did enjoy that. I'm a big fan of Apple stuff for many years, so it was kind of a fun little moment where I'm like, we're talking about photographs with Phil Schiller, like that's happening. Um, he's always been a photographer. He like follows like one other photography service on Twitter, I think. Like he's like he doesn't really so that was cool. But for me, I think there's been a few photographers that I've discovered, and particularly like not white male photographers,
Hmm.
which I
Hmm.
find to be really great to see them. We've worked hard to try to reach out to them, and it's been hard with our initial tech press to get a lot of that community involved. The white male photography community tend to jump on there really early on, but I really have loved discovering photographers and photography like outside of my normal space. I don't know, whatever, whatever you want to call it, like that I'm involved in. And that's been really awesome. It's not easy enough to find those people, and we're working on that. But that's like the moments and interactions that I've had have just been great, and I love that about it. I love that, and we might not always be, only way to interact is with comments, but I do love that the commenting gives you that like discussion space. And by being a subscription service, there's a benefit towards us not having and you getting to experience a space that doesn't have anybody and anyone who can just freely sign up for an account and just do whatever they want on the service. They're like committed in a way to this space and this community in a way that you wouldn't necessarily get, and so it can feel nicer in a way. I've been designing digital products for a long time, and I kind of miss what I would call the more earnest internet and a more earnest space. And I feel like because of the subscription model, this space can feel a bit more like that. And I hope it continues to. I think our strong community guidelines will help there too. But those, it feels good. And I think I like that about it. A lot.
I agree with the finding the wide mix of different photographers and being able to see people's photos, I think, from all over the world, which of course, you can always say that about Instagram, or you can say that about anything else. But being able to go in and actually find those photographers. I'm thinking of one in particular, probably the first photographer who I saw in Glass. His name was Bobby Boston, and he's from Atlanta. Oh. And he is a street photographer. And I mean, the photos that he takes are just such high contrast, and he's so close to these people. And it's every single one of his photos, you think to yourself, what is going on here? Like, how does he put himself in these situations? And it's just so immersive. And like you said, something that this is not what I shoot. This is not my sphere of photography. So being able to discover a new photographer like him and then reach out, and instead of just like liking his photo, being forced to, or being encouraged to comment and say something and then have a conversation with him has been an absolute blast. But
that's great to hear. Great
of course. Tom, I know that we are just about at the end of our time here. So I want to ask, is there anything that maybe I didn't ask you today that you want to make sure that listeners know about Glass?
I think we've covered a lot. I think we're pretty good. But one thing is, it is a community. And I think the more you want to partake in that community, give to the community, the more you get back from the community. And I think that's a really like fun space to do. Like, I have gotten a lot more out of it the more I like interact with the community. Every time I like chat with someone or talk to someone, and I like to welcome people to Glass when I can find a photo or photographer from them, and just personally, and I think it's fun, and I see that they respond really well, and you get that conversation going and talk about Portra 400 film because they're really into film photography and they just love to talk about it. A shared mutual interest in hobby is a very fun way to meet and to interact with people. And I think the reminder to your audience and to people is, if you want to join Glass and be part of it, I think you want to participate in it and to give to it, but also, get the feedback from it. So upload your photos, but also participate, comment, just interact, follow. Those they're very basic interactions that have been, I wouldn't want to say exploited, but used extensively in weird, interesting ways by social media in general. And I think these are a lot more straightforward. You follow someone, you can see their photographs. You comment, they get notified. It's a very clear model, and I think that community is good. So I want to emphasize that to your listeners, if you can, about Glass, and if it resonates with them, I think you'd really enjoy being part of Glass.
Yeah, the more that you put in, the more that you get out. I love that.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward, but yet, it because we live in this this veil of internet anonymity, sometimes we can just kind of take a back seat. But again, the encouragement that we get from Glass is probably one of my favorite things there. So, Tom, before I let you go, can you let listeners know where they can find you online and find out more about Glass?
Yeah, so Glass is at glass.photo. Or you can search for Glass on the App Store, the iOS App Store for now. We're still considering other platforms and working towards those. And I'm online probably the most actively right now on Twitter, which is I'm T Watson, at T Watson on Twitter.
And how do we follow you on Glass?
Why was I even thinking? Of course, I'm just Tom, at Tom on Glass. I just think of it as like, you can find me. I have been around long enough to find that it's a little funny to think about me being this Tom on Glass, whereas like the
Yeah,
Tom on MySpace, if you remember that Tom on MySpace was
of
just like
course.
always your friend, which I feel a little awkward about. But yeah, on Glass, I'm at Tom on Glass. So nice and easy to find me there.
Over the past probably 4 years, I have really tried to make an effort to spend less time on social media just because I know how easy it is for me to, especially as somebody who shares information on social media, like the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook community. I know how easy it is to think, oh, what was that thing that I needed to know? Or what was that question that I asked in the group? And then open up Facebook, and then 20 minutes later, you realize that you've been scrolling that whole time, and you didn't even get on there to do the thing that you got on to do in the first place. And to me, like, I understand that time is our most precious resource. And to just give up that 20 minutes every day, or even multiple times a day, every time you go to the bathroom, every time you're waiting in line somewhere. I did not like that. So I have been spending less and less time on social media. So trying out a new app is a difficult thing for me to commit to, I guess. But one thing that, again, I love about Glass is that I find that I will open it up, and because the feed is in technically reverse chronological order, I will look at the photos, keep going, and I will find that I start to scroll. But once I realize, oh, wait a second, I'm just scrolling, I've reached the last photo that I saw, and now there's literally nothing more to do in that app. I consumed the photos, I saw them, I interacted with some photographers, let them know that I liked their photo, or asked them a question about how they captured a photo, and then I turn off my phone, go on about my day. Get back out there, keep shooting. That's what I truly find interesting, and that really makes me feel like this app fits me wonderfully. So if you ever find yourself in that situation where you just kind of mindlessly scroll for periods of time and you want to cut back on that, and you also want a place where you can share your photos, Glass is going to be the place for you to do that. My biggest takeaway was just hearing Tom's, insight into doing user testing and finding people using it in the same way that I was. They get on it, they use it, and then they turn it off, and then they get back to their life. I love that. I love that so much. And it reminds me of a story of, I guess I don't remember where I heard this story. Maybe it was on a documentary or something. But when Google first launched, they had people come in and test Google to see, if they liked it or not. And they found that when people would go to google.com, they would wait and wait and wait and wait. Obviously, these are in the days of dial-up, so you were used to waiting on the internet. And when the person in charge would ask, like, what are you waiting for? They would say, we're just waiting for the rest of the page to load. Like, people had already become so used to having a page just full of information and just coming at you from every angle with information. And here you go, and look at this, and wow, what about this thing? And then Google was kind of this like refreshing, like, oh, this is simple. This is all that I need. I just need to search for the thing, and then I'm done. And that's how I feel about Glass. So again, anyway, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm really enjoying my time on Glass. So if you want to check it out, feel free to do so. Again, it is on iPhone. It is no longer invitation only. Anybody can download it, sign up. And while you're there, come look for me, Raymond Hatfield, of course. And I'd love to see some of your photos. So with that, I want you to go out. I want you to shoot. I want you to stay safe. I want you to be kind. Obviously, keep shooting. And there was one other thing. Nope, that was it. All right. Until next week, stay safe. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.